World leaders are furious at Donald Trump and his despicable regime, and they are now blocking Donald Trump from using their territories to attack Iran. Most notably, the United Kingdom, through its Prime Minister Keir Starmer, just announced the United States will not be able to use any of the Royal Air Force bases across the world, not in the UK, not in Diego Garcia, which is the largest island in the Chagos archipelago. You can't touch UK land, Donald, if you're going to use it for attacking Iran. And UK has said that they believe that any invasion of Iran or attack on Iran would violate international law. And of course, pressure should be applied to the Ayatollah. Of course, there should be diplomatic efforts and, all types of pressure, all good. But in terms of a unilateral war, the UK is saying, nope, we are blocking you from using our Air Force bases. And we're seeing that pretty much throughout the entire world. Really, the only ally of the United States right now in any action against Iran, or frankly, in most actions geopolitically, is Israel. It's the U.S. and Israel against Iran. And the United States has moved 2 aircraft carrier groups right by Iran. But other than these aircraft carrier groups, they need permission from even places like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. They need to have allies across Europe help with support and logistics. You really can't just do something like this alone. And I think Donald Trump is seeing that when you alienate and isolate all of your friends and you do this bizarre board of peace thing where you're propping up authoritarian leaders who basically bribe you with quid pro quos. The rest of the world doesn't like that. The Times was the first to report that UK is blocking Trump from using Royal Air Force bases for strikes on Iran. The disagreement over the use of British sites is now behind Donald Trump's withdrawal of support for the Chagos Islands deal. The Times understands. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But here are the Air Force bases that the U.S. needs to use as part of its current military plan against Iran. The Royal Air Force Fairford base inside the UK itself, and Diego Garcia, you see right there, it's part of the Chagos Island archipelago. You see that in the Indian Ocean. And you see why that's very strategically important in terms of attacking Iran. And here's how it's being reported. Starmer is blocking this request by Donald Trump. They believe it is a violation of international law. Now, when Donald Trump held this weird Board of Peace meeting yesterday, he said that he now needs about 10 days to decide whether or not the United States is going to attack Iran. And no doubt, I think a lot of this delay is potentially caused by the fact that countries are blocking, former allies are blocking Donald Trump's use of their territories. They're not providing logistical support. The European Union and others are not sharing intelligence with the United States anymore. This is what you get, Donald. This is a consequence of your attack on the world order and the rest of the world. Here, play this clip.
Nobody could have signed. You would have had that threat. Nobody could have had, you couldn't have had peace in the Middle East. So now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days.
Now, Donald Trump is attacking the UK in response and saying that he doesn't support the UK's deal with Mauritius regarding the Chagos Islands. So Chagos Islands, it's an archipelago that you just saw in that other photo in the Indian Ocean. The UK got into this dispute with Mauritius in the 60s. The UK basically peeled off from Mauritius during decolonization, the Chagos archipelago, and had a U.S. military base built on Diego Garcia. The people who lived in Chagos were basically expelled and kicked out, and Diego Garcia has basically been this military base. And now a deal was struck between the UK and Mauritius, basically for Mauritius to technically own Diego Garcia and the Chagos archipelago, but then lease back to the UK for the next 99 years. The archipelago. So technically, It would still be under UK control, although owned by Mauritius. That's how they resolved the dispute there. Originally, Marco Rubio came out in favor of this deal. I mean, the U.S. said they supported this because the 99-year lease with Mauritius meant the U.S. could keep its Air Force base on Diego Garcia. But now that the UK is saying you can't use Diego Garcia to attack Iran because it would violate international law, Donald Trump now rips up the deal, rips up his previous statements, and changes course because Donald Trump's word means absolutely nothing. It's just complete and utter trash. So just to give you receipts, back on May 22nd, 2025, Secretary of State Marco Rubio put out the following statement. The U.S. welcomes the historic agreement between the U.K. and Mauritius on the future of the Chagos archipelago. Remember, Diego Garcia is one of the islands in the archipelago. It's the biggest island in that archipelago in the Indian Ocean. This agreement secures the long-term, stable, and effective operation of the joint U.S.-UK military facility at Diego Garcia, which is critical to regional and global security. We value both parties' dedication. The U.S. looks forward to our continued joint work to ensure the success of our shared operations. Right? Pretty clear. The U.S. is saying we support you giving back, or technically giving ownership back to Mauritius of Diego Garcia and the Chagos archipelago because the military base is still controlled. But then yesterday, Donald Trump posts, I have been telling Prime Minister Keir Starmer that leases are no good when it comes to countries, and that he is making a big mistake by entering a 100-year lease with whoever it is that is claiming right, title, and interest to Diego Garcia, strategically located in the Indian Ocean. I mean, just think about that statement. Whoever it is. It's Mauritius. It's a country called Mauritius. That's who it is. Is that too difficult for you to understand, Donald? Our relationship with the United Kingdom is strong and a powerful one, and has been for many years. But Starmer is losing control of this important island by claims of entities never known of before. Never heard of Mauritius? Okay. In our opinion, they are fictitious in nature. Should Iran decide not to make a deal, it may be necessary for the United States to use Diego Garcia and the airfield located in Fairford in order to eradicate a potential attack by a highly unstable and dangerous regime, an attack that would potentially be made on the United Kingdom as well as other friendly countries. Prime Minister Starmer should not lose control for any reason of Diego Garcia by entering a tenuous at best 100-year lease. This land should not be taken away from the UK, and if it is allowed to be, it will be a blight on our great ally. We will always be ready, willing, and able to fight for the UK, but they have to remain strong in the face of wokeism and other problems put before them. Do not give away Diego Garcia. And you saw what Rubio said in May, and this is just all about the fact that the UK is saying, no, you can't use our lands to invade Iran. That's what this is all about, and that other nations are blocking the Trump regime as well. And it's important to note that other nations across the world are making their moves to outmaneuver and checkmate Donald Trump as well, right? As the U.S. is engaged in this massive purge of immigrants, basically shutting down the United States and saying, if you're an immigrant, if you want to help our country, get the hell out of here. Contrast this to Canada, what they're doing with their military. Canada is not only just making a push to attract skilled migrants, but also for areas in defense as well. Foreign military recruits from Canada include doctors, nurses, and pilots. Canada aims to reduce its reliance on the U.S. with its new defense strategy that Carney rolled out earlier this week. And express entry will include senior managers in transport sectors. And in order to help with its labor shortages, they're looking to add up to 125,000 jobs over the next decade. That will include a lot of immigrants as well. That's what they're doing over there. As I mentioned, it's not just the UK that's blocking the United States from, Air Force bases and military coordination. The European Union in general is not supportive of the U.S. invasion of Iran. Donald Trump's buds in Saudi Arabia don't want to see this. Qatar is very reluctant at all, knowing that they'll likely be hit by Iran. So Trump's kind of going alone. I mean, we heard Giorgia Meloni, the prime minister of Italy. I mean, she says, look, we think that Iran needs to not be able to acquire nuclear weapons. We know the risks involved if it does. We need to put pressure on. But at this stage, it's important to reach an agreement to avoid actions that will further destabilize an already fragile region. But people recognize, too, that it's not just Iran, that if there was a strike in Iran, that would be, a major issue. Right now, people don't really are focused on it, but Syria is very not stable as well right now. Al-Jilani, who's their leader, who's the former leader of Al-Qaeda, who now runs Syria, his hold on Syria is kind of tenuous as well. And if you were to basically, either try to provoke regime change in Iran or in the region generally, and it leads to this massive conflagration there, it could spread to Syria, it could spread to Saudi Arabia, and soon you could just have massive war everywhere in the Middle East, and that could cause tons of Americans to lose their lives and lots of people's lives to be put in jeopardy and peril based on this dangerous game that Trump is playing. But just if you want to see what's happening around the world as well, I mean, there was this big AI conference that just took place in India, and you have French President Emmanuel Macron there. Look at him with Modi. When friends connect, innovation follows. Ready for the AI Impact Summit. And then you have Macron with President Lula of Brazil. Happy to reunite with great friends in New Delhi. President Lula, we are joining forces for responsible artificial intelligence and for social media platforms that do not put our children at risk. We will succeed. We will not back down. That's obviously a message directed at Donald Trump as well. And speaking of messages directed at Donald Trump, there was a awful, completely botched and failed, which we knew from the outset it was going to be, negotiation or discussing in Geneva this past week. There have been a few days of this Geneva Peace Summit, as it was called. It's supposed to be a trilateral, but it was really kind of a bilateral, the U.S. and Russia trying to beat down on Zelensky. Russia brought in their new negotiator, a guy named Medinsky, who was there to basically stall, delay, to read history books to Ukraine, literally not negotiate at all. They just spent the time reading history books to Zelensky to say that actually Ukraine historically belongs to the Russian Empire, and we need to bring back the czars, and Ukraine needs to submit because it really belongs to Russia. And Zelensky's like, aren't we supposed to be here to talk about ceasefires? Aren't we supposed to be here to talk about actual peace plans? Why the hell are you reading me textbooks? You don't think I know the history? You don't think I know that you're giving me fabricated history? You don't think I know that this is a delay tactic so you can use the Iranian Shahid drones and your ballistic missiles and cruise missiles to kill innocent Ukrainians? Like, you don't think I realize what's really going on here? Here's Zelensky's post. I don't need historical shit to end this war and move to diplomacy because it's just a delay tactic. I read no less history books than Putin, and I learned a lot. I know more about this country than he knows about Ukraine. I know more about his country, Russia, than he knows about Ukraine, simply because I've been to Russia, to many cities, and I knew a lot of people there. He has never been to Ukraine this many times. He was only in big cities. I went to small cities from the northern part to the southern part, everywhere. I know their mentality. That's why I don't want to lose time on all these things. It's about them. They decided to have such a system. The Russians decided to change themselves. The Russians decided that they needed a new czar. It's up to them. But there is security. There is a big war waged against us. This is our lives. The only thing that I want to speak about with him is that I think that we need to resolve it in the most successful way. I mean to end this war quickly. This is why I want to speak only about such things. And while that's happening, you have Dr. Oz and Pete Hegseth going on a freaking play date together. You had Zelensky go on Piers Morgan. I don't really love that show, but it's an understatement. But here's what Zelensky had to say there as well. Here, play this clip.
And I can definitely speak about it and etc. But I don't need to waste time on historic issues, reasons why he began all this, I think, bullshit, what he's raising with Americans and etc. That it's not simple things about the Peter the First and etc. I don't need it, because for end this war and to go to diplomatic way, I don't need all this historical shit. Really.
One of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of our allies also not supporting the United States and helping anyway logistically with the U.S. wanting to invade Iran, it's things like this. This is what Zelensky's pointing out. U.S. promised the Europeans licenses to produce Patriot missiles, but then refused. Remember a few months back when the U.S. we're giving Patriot missiles to Europe. we're not going to help Ukraine. We're going to give it to Europe, and then Europe can buy it, and then they can give it to Ukraine. Remember how that was like reported? The U.S. is giving Patriot missiles. And I was like, BS. That's never going to happen. But Germany now has no air defense missiles left to give Ukraine because the U.S. says it's run out of its Patriot systems and missiles to sell Germany. So there is no licensing deal. It was all BS to begin with. Zelensky says it didn't have to be this way. There were promises of licenses, but America ultimately didn't go along with it. Donald Trump, who's breached contracts and deals his entire life. That's why he's bankrupted so many companies. That's why he's a fraud. That's why he's a felon. That's why he's a sexual abuser. I mean, he's a bad guy who breaches contracts, who's horrible. And here he's doing it again right here when Ukraine needs it the most. He is not helping in any way. I'll point this out too. Like Donald Trump is so thirsty to make like countries like Belarus his allies. But get this. Visas for what Belarus posted. Visas for our delegation to the Peace Council meeting were not issued, despite all documents being submitted on time and procedures followed. Belarus had informed organizers that by decision of the head of state, Foreign Minister Maxim Rykhanov would attend. The invitation from the President of the United States was addressed to Belarus's head of state. If even basic formalities aren't respected, what peace are we even talking about right there? And, so that's where we're at. We'll keep you posted every step of the way. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million. Thanks, everybody.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.